The question is that this bill be now read a second time. I call the member for Riverina.
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I'm very pleased that I'm joined in the chamber by no less than the Veterans Affairs Minister, and I thank him for the work that he is doing on behalf of our veterans, and also the Shadow Defence Minister, and I thank him for also the work he's doing in the defence space, and thank him for his service with the SAS because he kept our nation safe. He, like others, were sent to conflicts to do what they were asked by the Parliament and by the people. And it's a brave undertaking. And the fact that he is now continuing to serve our nation and our people in this important role is tremendous, and I do wish him all the very best when he is one day, the Defence Minister, because I think we'd be very well served if he were in that portfolio position in the not-too-distant future. This Defence Amendment, Parliamentary Joint Committee on Defence Bill 2024, is an important bill. It establishes the new Parliamentary Joint Committee on Defence through amendments to the Defence Act, which dates back to 1903. Indeed, my hometown of Wagga Wagga is the only inland regional centre with all three arms of the defence. Every Army recruit does their soldiering training at Kapooka, Blamey Barracks, home of the soldier, and they do that basic training at 1st Recruit Training Battalion, and we have an Air Force base at Forest Hill, RAF Wagga, where air power begins. It says so on the hangar, and if you spend any given time in the Royal Australian Air Force, you will probably end up at Wagga Wagga, at Forest Hill. And with those brave Air Force men and women at Forest Hill, the Navy base. We have a Navy base there, where anywhere up to 80 officers serve. Who would have thought? I know the Murrumbidgee is a big river. That's what it means in Wiradjuri, deep water as well. But indeed, to have a Navy base, it's a long way from the nearest drop of seawater, Deputy Speaker, and we're very proud. We do have a beach. So thank you, Veterans Affairs Minister. It was rated the 9th best beach in Australia not that long ago. But indeed, the Navy forms a very important part of our tri-military service in Wagga Wagga, capital of the Riverina. And I say all this in the context of this bill because this new Joint Committee on Defence will often look into defence infrastructure and funding and spending, and that is important. That is one of its key components, core roles. And at the moment, the Riverina redevelopment program, there is $1.408.78 billion. That's $1,000 million being spent at the two Wagga Wagga defence bases, Kapooka and Forest Hill. And I thank the government for continuing to build on the record funding committed by the former coalition government. It's too important not to. RAF and Kapooka go back, RAF Wagga and Kapooka go back to the Second World War, and they play a very integral role in the training of our men and women who wear the uniforms of this nation. At Blamey Barracks, at Kapooka, the approved budget, $846.864 million. The works include new recruit accommodation, new medical training facility, new recruit physical training facility, new recruit welfare facilities, a multifunction centre, new facilities for the Australian Army Band Kapooka. So important. The community thinks they own the band, but the band are there to play the music and the tunes as on the regular Friday march-outs. That is their main role, but they become so enmeshed with the community that the community thinks they own them. New headquarters building, new clothing and queue store, new weapons range, and other upgraded new infrastructure works, electrics, water, sewage, etc. Now that's at Kapooka. Now at RAF Base Wagga, where we were joined on the 13th of June by the member for Moreton in his capacity as chair of the Public Works Committee, and his deputy, the member for Hinkler, we heard and we toured and we listened to the officials, to the Defence authorities about the upgrades to RAF Base Wagga. And I say this again in the context of this bill because it is very relevant, because this is the sort of work which will be also undertaken by this committee, by this new Parliamentary Joint Committee. And the works at RAF Wagga, the approved budget is $561.929 million. They include new recruit and trainee accommodation. Let me tell the Parliament, if that weren't the case, if this wasn't going to be funded, then indeed there would be every opportunity for a future government to look at RAF and think, why do we need to continue to be operating out of Wagga Wagga? Because the accommodation was 1950s, 1960s, certainly not fit for purpose for the modern era. A new combined mess, new gymnasium and pool, new weapons training simulation system. They're very expensive, those things, but so very necessary. New fire tanks and pump house, new education facilities, a new retail facility. And these are going to be important components that are going to secure not only the future of those two bases, but the future of training in a regional setting. And it's vital that that be the case. All training for defence doesn't need to be in metropolitan areas. Indeed, it probably ought not be in metropolitan areas. I know the work that goes on up at Capricornia and elsewhere right across the nation. If defence does one thing well, it is spreads its training, spreads its works right across this broad nation. This is important legislation, and it is also, as the Shadow Minister for Defence has quite correctly pointed out, deeply concerning that there could be some in the House of Representatives, in the Parliament indeed, who do not share the same vision for training, for our defence commitments, for our defence spending, as those of the major parties do. And in that, and by that, I mean the Greens, and let's call it what it is. And I have great concerns about the Greens' attitude towards the security of this nation. I do. And I think that is shared across the Parliament, across the aisles. And the Greens, rest assured, they are not an environmental party. They stopped being an environmental party decades ago. They are about destroying the very fabric that made this country great. They are about societal change which does not enhance this country, which does not place us amongst the great nations of the world. And I know when I went to Camp Baird, I've been there on a number of occasions, but my very first visit to Camp Baird 10 or so years ago on a multi-party parliamentary visit, I can remember being told there by the Americans how proud they were to serve alongside Australians, how proud they were of our commitment, and the fact that when things got a little bit tough in various conflicts, that Australia did not cut and run. The Greens wouldn't have had us there in the first place. They wouldn't have had too many people, if any, wearing a uniform, certainly making sure that our combat equipment was modernised, was the latest and greatest. They wouldn't be party to that either, because, and I hear shame, and that is so true, because it is shameful, the fact that they have this view. And, you know, none of us like war. None of us like conflict. What is going on in the Middle East and Ukraine at the moment is so desperate and so unnecessary, and so many innocent, particularly civilian lives, are being lost. But the price of peace is eternal vigilance, and to ensure that we have a nation at the ready, we need to invest. We need to spend money. We need to make sure that when our fellow like-minded nations are in peril and are in trouble, that we are there for them, such as Ukraine, such as the peace deployments that we spend a lot of time and money and effort into making sure they are what they need to be. The Greens plan, according to its own platform, states that this party will cancel defence contracts and cut defence spending, renegotiate the US alliance to secure a new relationship focused on making us a better global citizen. Reduce military spending to 1.5% of GDP and close all military bases that foreign militaries have set up in this country. So goodbye to all the Marines who land in the top end, who land at Darwin, who land in the Northern Territory. Goodbye to all of that. Goodbye indeed to our US alliance. And rest assured, if ever there is a friend that we need in times of crisis, it will be the United States of America. It doesn't matter whether a Democrat or a Republican is in the White House. We have a long-standing and close relationship with the United States of America, and it's good for us, and rest assured it's good for them too. But you get a power-sharing arrangement with the Greens. You get those manic, desperate, anti-Australian politicians who have any say in government policy, any say in defence spending, any say in defence full stop, then we are in trouble as a nation.
Say goodbye to AUKUS and Pine Gap.
Say goodbye to AUKUS, say goodbye to Pine Gap. Indeed, all of that. That is going to be the first things that are going to be cut. And I do hope that whatever the result is of the next election, that the Greens are nowhere near the Treasury benches. Nowhere near the Treasury benches. I would rather see a Labor Party in a majority government than a Labor Party sharing government with that mob. Absolutely, and I think that would be shared by everyone around this, by most sane, sensible people across this nation. And those people who are in those inner-city electorates who even think of putting the Greens somewhere on their ballot paper apart from last, they need to think again. They need to think again. And I think what really also needs to happen is that Labor members really ought to think carefully about where their preferences go. Now, in a federal election, you have to number every box, but number that very carefully. Give it very solid and serious consideration, and that is going to be so important. So, it's no secret that the Greens are opposed to AUKUS, and I know that former Prime Minister Morrison was criticised for some of the things that he did. I will defend him until my dying breath because I know the work and the effort that he put in during COVID-19. I know because I was right beside him in all of those meetings where we were told that tens of thousands of Australians could potentially die within weeks if we didn't do something. And I respect the leadership that he showed and the tremendous effort that he went to put the nation first, and that is why the Johns Hopkins Centre rated us second in the world for our COVID-19 response. We kept Australians alive, we kept the doors of business open, and we kept Australians in work. And that is the legacy of Scott Morrison. Now, I also know the work that he went to behind the scenes to forge a deal with the United States and with the United Kingdom on our defence initiatives, on the things that we have in common with those two great nations. And rest assured, AUKUS is such a good policy. It was adopted by those opposite when they got into power. If it wasn't, they would have shelved it, trust me. But they knew that it was the right thing to do. They knew that it was the right investment. They knew that it was the right time and place in which to do it. And that relationship with Washington and with London is so important for Canberra. It is so important because it is going to underpin our defence, our security in the future. And national security and protection of Australian people is first and foremost, or should be, of any government. Won't be if the Greens have anything to do with a power-sharing arrangement after the next election or any election any time in the future. But this defence amendment, the Joint Committee on Defence Bill, is legislation that is important. It's legislation that I know the Shadow Minister has foreshadowed amendments to. I respect those amendments. I agree with those amendments because it's too important to muck this up. It's too important to get this wrong. It's too important to let any power sharing arrangements tamper with or have any ill effect on our national security and on our defence.
I thank the member for